Previously in Hedge Knights, Megahoof started to analyze the Salix roots to figure out how to relocate them to the Bison Glade. Madzi entered her teen years and decided one day to become a squire, just like Lazarus. A second, smaller bison pen was built to separate Mojo from Lily to stop new bison from being born. A massive raid attacked in the middle of the night. The Adlets won, but Lazarus fell ill. Judea built a crematorium to dispose of the rotting corpses. And the Adlets started construction on a room dedicated for prayer and community. Episode 17, Grand Altar. During the party, the other Adlets asked Sapo what he could do with the honey to improve their foods, and he proposed attempting to ferment the honey into mead. The other Adlets were skeptical. They were actually inquiring about sweetening their food with it, but gave him the go-ahead to try a batch of mead instead. Sapo asked the builders to build a little box to house the section of honeycomb that housed the queen bee. Whether or not the others liked mead, the extra honey and wax would be useful. While chatting with Dave, Judea had the idea to cover their gatehouse with roofing tiles. While it hadn't snowed this winter, the added roofs would keep the courtyard free of snow, allowing the Adlets to muster quickly in the event of a raid or siege. Judea told Dave he looked fairly ill and suggested he retire to the keep and rest before his symptoms worsened. Just like his last stint recovering in the keep, Dave wanted to keep himself busy and decided to try to make their home more tidy and organized. He looked around for projects he could do within the keep walls and hoped his time isolated would be spent well. He was happy to have a home, but parts of his mercenary life never really truly left Dave, like his wanderlust and thirst for a good adventure. Hopefully soon he'd volunteer for a new quest, but he knew the others would only agree if he was in good health, and this made recovering within the keep walls a little easier. While harvesting Nutrifungus, Sapo turned to Lazarus and asked, "Hey, is anything missing?" Lazarus looked down at his falchion and over to the bow affixed on Sapo's back, and they both laughed as they had forgotten their tools back on the tool rack. Dave finished building the apiary, yet another project he could complete within the confines of the keep. The Adlets weren't sure how to care for a beehive, but didn't want to bother Megahoof pulling him away from his botany studies, so they loaded the lower part of the hive with harvested vegetables in hopes the bees could make use of the plants. Megahoof pored over ancient texts in search of answers, but found very little he thought would be useful. Botanists seldom analyzed roots. There were descriptions of bark, branches, twigs, flowers, stems, fruits, and just about every other conceivable part of a tree. But information about root structure was seldom included. He came to the realization that the Salix tree was unique enough that he'd need to run experiments rather than unlock clues from the past. The tree was clearly an adaptation to the hostile environment, much like the mutated waste rats who could resist the polluting toxicity. He concocted experiments he could run on small clippings of the roots that Sapo had obtained, and hoped he could solve the mystery of why it disintegrated so rapidly when uprooted. Lazarus awoke to Megahoof soothing his young child so he could get a better night's rest. He ate a quick breakfast and headed to the fungal fields, only to notice that Dave had spent likely hours hauling the previous harvested mushrooms to the shelves in the pantry. As soon as Sapo finished processing the last of the hops, he joined Lazarus in the farm to help with the influx of work. The burden of responsibility to keep the bison glade running was shouldered by everyone so evenly that nobody felt burdened. Tangier realized the glade was overdue for acidic smog and decided to spend her day mining a buffer zone around the keep. The last time she was mining at the limestone outcropping, raiders besieged the glade, but the curtain walls and gatehouses offered terrific shelter, and she felt more safe than ever before. Dave realized that the precious space inside the keep didn't need to accommodate the shelves of timber and raw wood, and decided to relocate the stockpiles up where the islets had moved the cut stone blocks. The space could be reallocated for shelves of nutrifungus, and the cold wintry air would help preserve the fungus so it could last even longer. Nobody was happy about having to do extra hauling, moving the timber and nutrifungus to the newly designated areas, but they realized it was a reasonable and rational change, so they worked to haul the provisions and materials without complaint. Lazarus was eager to return to armor smithing, but knew the nutrifungal farms wouldn't harvest themselves. And Sapo was often busy cooking to keep everybody fed. The islets asked Megahoof about his research progress, and he pedantically explained the difficulty of researching a tree that seemed unrelated to all other trees. After an accidental, unrequested lecture, Megahoof looked around to the disengaged faces of his friends and politely excused himself. They supported his work, but clearly didn't want to know the details. With Tangier's new outlook on her skills as a miner, she found herself enjoying mining the stone outcroppings around the glade. Time seemed to fly by as she chipped away at the stone, and before she knew it, the limestone near the two southern trees was almost entirely quarried. She decided to seek out new mountains to flatten. The islets had plenty of salt iron and coal, so she'd leave gathering those materials when the stocks ran low. Madzi wanted to try her hand at some of the masonry work that she had watched for so many seasons. She didn't yet have the skill for it, but she'd learn in time just as Dave did. The last of the prayer room walls were set to be completed today. What remained was the monumental altar and all of the prayer sheets to adorn the timber floor. A small section of the new wing in the keep would be added to the main keep, while a new wall would be constructed to separate the prayer room from the noise and commotion of the workshop kitchens and hearth. The salix trees likely couldn't absorb all of the pollution from the prayer room floors, but the smaller section added to the main room could be cleaned and hopefully absorbed. There was also, of course, the matter of repairing the destroyed monument to the fallen soldiers. For whatever reason, the last raid party decided to smash pieces of the monument. Judea pulled up the timber floor to prevent any material waste before bricklaying a new wall. Lazarus finally finished the final piece for his new suit of armor. His old hauberk was rusted, damaged, and ill-fitting. Thanks to the efforts of Tangier, the newly acquired iron allowed him to be armored head to toe in the best protection he could manage to smith. Although he was never promoted to knight, he sure felt and looked like one. If only his family back home could see him now, trimmed in shining armor alongside a talented wife with healthy child. Lily gave birth to her final calf, or at least until the salix trees could clean more of the bison glade. The new section needed to be smoothed and cleaned. The added space would help, as the adlets were packed into the main hall of the keep, surrounded by shelves, stockpiles, and production facilities. The keep was a bit of a mess. Madzi was frustrated with how difficult she found masonry to be. She had shadowed Judea and Tangier for many seasons, and they made the work look so effortlessly easy, but she could barely lay down flagstone without chipping and breaking the slate. She came to the realization that she had a lot to learn. She might occasionally get lucky, like hitting a maddened waste rat on her second try, but luck is fickle, and she sought to build up real skill. Judea planned to construct an auxiliary gatehouse just south of the main defensive courtyard to allow everyone to quickly enter and exit the curtain wall, while also not compromising the perimeter of the keep. The newly laid flagstone and illuminated pathways from iron lanterns would help the Adlets quickly traverse around the curtain wall. The stockpile of raw wood dwindled, and as soon as Sappho and Lazarus noticed, they marked all of the closest great pine to be cut in order to supply the keep with ample wood. Judea skipped a few meals to make sure the perimeter slab door was promptly constructed, so as to not offer any would-be raiders an easy way to circumvent the gatehouse defenses. Tangier was busy mining, Dave was restricted to the keep for his ailing health, and Madzi lacked the skill to build a complex slab door, so this task couldn't be shouldered by any of the other masons. The Adlets entered the last month of winter, with bellies full of bread, ale, and beer. No wild critters in the bison glade needed to be hunted, no austerity measures of rationing food, and strangely enough, no encroaching pollution seeking to strangle the keep. Judea moved some of the workbenches and hearths to better fit the newly annexed space in the main hall. There was certainly more organization and improvements to be made, but already the main hall felt more spacious and comfortable. A gentle snow shower brought some much-needed precipitation to the bison glade. The external farm fields were parched, and the water levels in the well was lower than it had been in seasons. Weather was far more predictable on the coast. Each season had its own pattern, and each year that pattern repeated. Nobody could discern a pattern in the Cotraro forest. There didn't seem to be a rainy season nor dry season, so tending crops and managing water levels was a little trickier than they had anticipated. For instance, nobody could have predicted thundersnow. Arauco felt inspired by the monumental altar under construction in the new prayer room and told the other adlets he needed a lot more cut stone before he could sculpt art. Arauco rarely asked for favors from the other adlets, so they were happy to help fulfill his request. He decided he wanted to work with limestone to match the monument, so the adlets got to work finding chunks to haul to the stone cutting table. Sapo and Lazarus had cut down dozens of trees around the glade, and now they'd returned to the stumps to chop them as well. Twisted trees grew so slowly and yielded so little wood that it was important to cut the trees down to the root. Judea was nearly finished with the monumental altar and asked the other adlets if she could be solely responsible for the crafting of prayer rugs. Bison wool might be plentiful, but it was still precious, and she didn't want any of it to go to waste. Instead of specifically prohibiting Madzi from helping, which would likely make her upset, she thought requesting that the work would solely fall to her would help to avoid that situation. Judea allowed Madzi to assist with some of the finishing touches on the monument. She thought it was important that Madzi be allowed to contribute to her first major project, but Judea planned to secretly go over the work just in case. Sapo was so busy harvesting nutrifungus and cutting down trees for lumber that he had forgotten to keep an eye on the pantry shelves, and no bread or flour remained. The other adlets had noticed and started to eat the packaged maki, so Sapo would let the others know to make sure to use the windmill once again. The grand altar was finally completed. Its massive construction stretched all the way to the high vaulted ceilings. All of the prayer rugs were finished as well, and what remained was Arauco's limestone carvings. The adlets came to the prayer room individually to marvel upon its great monolithic construction. Thank you for watching episode 17 of Hedge Knights Grand Altar. If you would like to support me as a content creator, please consider liking, subscribing, and sharing this series with your friends. If you would like to become one of my Patreon patrons, a link can be found in the description of this video. If you would like to join my gaming community, a link can be found in the description as well. Thank you so very much for watching. A special thank you to my Patreon patrons, Twitch subscribers, and viewers like you that support the channel and made it all the way to the credits. Thank you so very much. Hope to catch you next episode. Farewell.